I'm a couple of minutes late. I was playing my guitar and lost track of time. So sorry to keep you waiting. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're on top of things. Because I'm not. Just to be completely transparent, juggling a lot of tasks and a lot of different projects and work. Boy, it can take its toll. One of the things I talk about in one of my leadership sessions and workshops that I do is how important it is to focus on one thing at a time. And gosh, we talk about that a lot, right, in technology, where it's like, we need to be a good multitasker, a good, be able to easily switch gears from one thing to another. We put it in our job descriptions, must be a good multitasker. We put it on our resumes, how great we are at multitasking. But the truth is, none of us are good at multitasking as much as we might think, because our brains don't work that way. When we're switching from one thing to another, we might think, well, all right, I'm going to stop thinking about that stuff for a while and focus on this other thing. Our brains subconsciously continue to work on those other problems. And it kind of just, the more tasks we try to juggle, the more noise is in our heads, the more friction, the more stress, and we may not even realize it. How many times have you gone to bed and you woke up the next morning like, aha, I know how to fix that problem? That's because our brains don't stop thinking about the problems that we're trying to solve, even while we sleep. So I am a huge proponent of focusing on one thing at a time, as much as it is in your power to do so. Focus on one thing a day, one thing a week, and focus on getting that thing, whatever it is, across the finish line. And I promise you will get more work done faster and with less stress and higher quality work than trying to juggle a bunch of things every day. Oh, okay. So enough soapboxing. Don't know why I just felt compelled to talk about multitasking, but there it is. Please drop a comment into the stream wherever you are. I'd love to hear from you, hear what you got going on, seeing if where you're coming from. My name is David Neal. I'm a developer advocate for Pluralsight. My job is to help folks in technology be more awesome. At least that's my goal. And if there's something I can do to help you be more awesome, please let me know. Ankit is from Pune, India. Thank you for joining on Facebook. Glad that you're here. We are building a online or web-based real-time, as much as real-time as you can get, pretty much on a web-based application. But we're building a trivia application using some technologies that I know and some technologies that I'm learning right along with you. James says, appreciate your thoughts. Thank you, James. I appreciate your encouragement as I rambled on about multitasking. Armis says, hello from London. Great to have you on the stream today. Thank you for joining on LinkedIn. I don't even know if I have everything set up correctly, but if you want to follow along, Emmanuel says, hi, David, I'm from Nigeria. thank you for posting your comment and for joining on LinkedIn. That is really awesome. Let's see, where's my captions? Okay, so if you want to follow along on this project that we're working on together, you can get the source code on my GitHub repository at reverendgeek/ahot-trivia-game. AHOT stands for All Hands on Tech. This is the show that I, with my colleague Jeremy, run at Pluralsight. So he's got a stream that goes, I think, every Tuesday, where he's building a different kind of game using some JavaScript frameworks. And his is more focused on the front end kind of stuff. And I'm building a different kind of trivia game with Node.js. So a lot of the things that I've been doing have been more focused on the back end up until this point. And we still got a bunch of back end stuff to work on. So glad that you're here to follow along. I hope if you want to grab the source code or just take a peek at it, submit any questions or anything that you have, and appreciate your feedback and your comments. Anytime you want to pop a question in, wherever you are, if it's LinkedIn or Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, I'd love to hear from you. Speaking of comments, Connor says, hi from Texas, student looking to learn more about technology. Well, Connor, I hope you're in the right place because my job is to not only help folks to learn some new technologies, but to encourage people as well. So I've been on my tech journey now for many years, and I love software and creating applications and building things. Software and programming is a very creative process, much like creating illustrations or creating music or any number of other creative tasks. Software is much the same way because we have all these kind of ingredients and tools, languages, things that are at our disposal to do creative things with. And I love to learn, and that's why I'm still, after all these years, doing what I do, because technology to me is pretty exciting with all the new things that come out all the time. There's never a dull moment either. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, let's face it, technology can also be pretty frustrating at times. So you need a little patience and give yourself some grace, because we're all learning, and it's not always easy, but it can be extremely rewarding. Emmanuel piped in on my multitasking rant and says, when we try to do multiple tasks at once, our brain has to switch its focus between different tasks. The switching can cause a decrease in productivity and increase in errors, and it can lead to increased stress levels, fatigue, and overall cognitive performance. Multitasking may seem like a good idea. It can actually have a negative effect on productivity and mental health. Instead, it's generally on one task at a time. Give it your full attention until it's completed. Boy, that is a great summary of some of the things that I said as well. I agree with you 100%. Thank you for putting that in the comments. Emmanuel from YouTube says, hello, by the way, I love your talk on leadership. Thank you so much. I appreciate hearing that encouragement and feedback. Alvi on Twitch says, have you ever made websites full stack? Yes, I have. I've been building web applications for since about as long as the web as we know it has existed, since the HTML and CSS and JavaScript started to become a thing. I've been building web applications, and I've worn all the hats, from back-end developer, database administrator, security, APIs, typed languages, compiled languages. Spent a lot of time on the Microsoft stack doing end-to-end application development for years and years. So I do have a bit of experience. What type of authentication do professional websites use? JWTs or something else? Well, man, there's a lot to unravel in that. There's different kinds of authentication. I used to work for Okta. I was a developer advocate for Okta for a few years, so my opinion may be a little bit biased, but I do believe that the OAuth standards for authentication and for an OpenID Connect for like identity are, anytime we can use a standard and agree upon a standard is a win for the work that we do, the longevity of that work, and for the industry as a whole. So my opinion is OAuth is the way to go. JWTs, or JOTs, as some people pronounce them, also play a role, or is usually goes hand in hand with that technology. So yeah, I think JOTs are a good solution for API security, for using some standards around tokens. James asks, have you ever used Vortex while developing? I recently came across this tool. It's been very helpful while developing. Random thought, but wanted to share with everyone. Vortex Hub. Let me see. Trying to see if there's a way I can show this. There we go. I should use this feature more often. But yeah, I have not heard of Vortex Hub or Vortex. So that's thanks for sharing. I will be sure. I'll make myself a note to check that out after the stream. Where's my notebook? Guess I'll use my iPad. I don't have my camera set up, but you can, let me see if I can zoom in on that, or fix the focus on there. Sorry, it's still zoomed in for a while. I'm going to create myself a new note here to check out Vortex. Thank you, James. Jeremy on Twitch says, do you find that keyboard pretty handy for the iPad? Is it worth the price? This keyboard is pretty doggone pricey. But I have found, I had the Jeremy, I had the Smart Folio, or whatever it's called, the keyboard folio before this one, and I used it for many years. I got used to using that keyboard and really liked it. But the cover started to wear out, and the connector started to have some issues. And so it was starting to get flaky. And I heard good things about this Magic Keyboard. And I got to say, I love it. I've used it a lot. And I'll use it whenever I sit down to work. If I'm doing drawings, I'll probably take the iPad off the keypad, because it's kind of almost fixed I can't lay it. It won't fold completely flat the other direction. So I'll usually take the iPad off, but it's real easy to do so. And I'll do some illustrations, and I'll put the iPad back on the Magic Keyboard to like finish my workflow, like to create social media posts or respond to emails. There's a lot of stuff that I do on the iPad from my thinking chair over here in the corner, that I normally might do on a laptop. And so I love that option of keeping my laptop right here, ready to go for coding and streaming at my desk, and then use my iPad and have the benefit of the keyboard. So the keyboard really is an awesome experience for the iPad. Highly recommend it. It's not cheap, but I would buy it again after using it now for a couple of years. All right. I've been talking about all kinds of stuff besides the the Node.js project that we've been working on together, and that's okay. Any questions, any comments, post those in the chat wherever you are. I love hearing and engaging with folks. So if there's anything I can help you with, please let me know. I'm going to switch gears over to my desktop, but I got to plug things in first because I was not prepared as I normally am. There we go. Hey, Lee Brandt is joining us from Twitch. So good to hear from you, my friend. Congratulations on your product hunt, right? I saw the post that y'all put on LinkedIn and places, so that is really cool. Check out Architect.io, I believe it is. Where's oh yeah. Here I am. Now I'm in the corner. You can still see me. So for the last few weeks, months, we've been building this trivia game together. And it's Node.js on the back end. We're using Socket.io to do some real-time communications between the server and the front end. We're using Fastify on top of Node.js to be like our web framework, web server. We're using Vue on the front end for making, the Vue components and all the things that Vue can do for you, make that a little bit easier. Using Tailwind CSS, although we haven't done much with Tailwind yet other than set it up and get it in the project. And, but the front, one of these days, we're going to, put our focus on making the application look pretty, but we're not quite there yet because we still have some interesting problems to solve building the application itself. So last stream we were together, we did some of these tasks like starting the game, showing the questions for the trivia questions and being able to record from the player, at least on the client. I think where we got to was getting ready to send over WebSockets the responses back to the server. So that's what we're going to focus on today, is receiving that data from the client on the server, storing that for each player, calculating and updating scores, and then sending that data back to the client. Really allowing that data to be broadcast to all the clients in real time, so that each player can, we may not show all the scores on every player's device. We at least want to show the current player themselves what their current score is. But have the option at least of knowing how much time is left, what their score is, and so forth. So, or we may not even show the score on the each of the players as they're playing, just show a countdown timer. That way they're not distracted by trying to see who's in the lead or any of that, but we may display all that summary information on another screen. All right, so in the client, we've got this this client JS, which is kind of like our kind of main view app. It's got our states that we still haven't used. It's got all the other components that we've defined so far, like our home, the join, waiting, countdown, and now the quiz. And we've got some data that we're keeping track of. And when we get data from the server, as the game is starting, we get like all the questions and the choices that are available for those trivia questions. And as the quiz is being played, the player that's taking the quiz is answering or skipping the questions, each of the questions. So we're getting an answer and we're getting skipped. Now we need to, our next step is to send that information to the server to be stored and to calculate the scores. Let me see. I need to bring up my notes from the last time we were together so that I got the right info to share with you, or heading in the right direction. All right, so this is my my terminal. If you're interested in getting the source code for yourself, that is available on GitHub. In my GitHub repository, github.com/reverendgeek/ahot-trivia-game. There's a README that's in that project that will instruct you on how to set things up. You'll need a version of Node.js installed. I recommend that you use NVM to install Node if you're interested in doing so. And that way, NVM makes it much easier to manage different versions of Node on your system. If you're on Windows, I highly recommend that you check out the Windows subsystem for Linux so that you can use a lot of the same tools and workflows that folks are using for building Node.js applications and other types of development stuff that kind of there's some goodness in in using the WSL and doing some of the same kinds of things that folks on Linux and Mac do when it comes to working inside of a terminal. I highly recommend that. So all the setup information is in there if you're interested. And then we've got all these tasks that we've been working on. So back to the client. I'm going to hide this caption. And again, at any point, if you have a question, you want to pop that into the chat, please do so. All right, so we need to send back to the server what the answer has been selected by the client. And to do that, let's see. Where's my... To do that, we're going to package some data together to send to the server. So we'll say we'll create a data object. And this will be like this player ID. Is this dot ID. We'll send what the question, the current question is. So this dot current question, the answer that the player provided, and that is the index that was passed for and let's see, what is there anything else? I think that's it. So we're going to use our socket so should be, yeah, sorry, I'd be jumping around, but just making sure. So we use our socket.emit to send a message to the server. And in this case, so the first parameter when using socket.io is like the name of the channel. Channel is like different event names, different, it's kind of a publish subscribe model. So you set up on one end on the server side what channels that you're listening to are the events that you're listening to. So this event we're going to call, we're just going to call it answer, the answer event. and we're going to send the data over that. And then an optional third parameter is an acknowledgement back from the server. So we're going to wait, or we're going to use that acknowledgement to update the score if we want to. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we may want to hold off showing the score while the game is being played on the players, but for now we'll assume that we're going to show the current score to the player. So we're going to, maybe we'll just call this response res, and we'll just console log that. And so this will happen later, like the update of the score will happen, could be milliseconds, right? Depending on latency to the user, or the player, they may not notice any lag whatsoever. But just so you know, this is happening asynchronously, whereas, the socket emit, as soon as that data is sent, as soon as the emit happens, we're using the code jumps straight to the next line to increment the current question, and the player can immediately start to read the next trivia question. And it may be, who knows? It could be milliseconds or more, depending on load or any number of factors that could increase latency. But for all intents and purposes, this should be fine. We don't have to wait for the response back from the server before we allow the client to move on to the next trivia question. And like I said, it could be so, the response could be so fast, since we are using sockets, that the player would never notice that there was any delay in getting a response back for the updated score. If they're skipping, then, that's what I want to do. I want to add another property to this data and say skipped is false. So that way we know exactly which questions were answered and which questions were skipped. So on the skip, we're going to build basically the same kind of structure, except the answer will be, maybe we'll say -1 and skipped equals true. We could combine both of those properties and say, if answer is -1, then we know that the answer, that question was skipped. Maybe we do that. That way, that's kind of that architectural, or, it might save a tiny bit of data that's being sent back and forth. But, I like for things to be explicit in the applications, making properties serve dual purpose, to add like state or different conditions based on, Yeah, in the old days when memory and storage and data was at such a premium, you might want to conserve as much as possible and reuse as much of like variables as you could. So you get really clever with using different values for a given property to mean different things. But over time, that can really come back to um, haunt you or create um, maintenance issues or something that where if it's not well documented, even if it is well documented, it doesn't mean that we always pay attention to um, comments or maybe the comments is in one file and you're working with code in another file and you don't realize that, hey, this property can also mean that the answer was skipped. So I like to be really explicit. So that's that's my that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it. Same socket emit. So you just saw me duplicate some code. This code and this right up here is exactly the same right now. And will probably be the same when we're finished. So that's a candidate, or could be a candidate for refactoring, where we might want to extract that code and put it in its own function, and just call that function from these kind of event methods. But for now, I'm going to leave it like it is. So on the server, we look at source, game server. We got our socket on connection, the socket on join game. We're sending the trivia down to the client. So somewhere in here would be a good place to put socket.on answer. And we'll have our data that's being sent, similar to this signature up here. We'll have a some data that's coming in on this, and we'll have our callback, which is how we acknowledge that data back to the client. Now here we can be explicit. We can use object destructuring. So instead of just taking in a single argument called data, we can use the curly braces to go ahead and break up that data object into individual variables. So I'm going to, let's see, there's ID, right? Question, answer, and skipped. Question, answer, and skipped. And Visual Studio Code is pretty helpful. As you can see, everything that's here with a red squiggly line, that's letting me know that I've declared this variable, but I'm not yet using it. It's one of those kind of linting rules that's just letting me know, hey, um, make sure you're not making a mistake. So over here on the server, one of the things I probably will want to keep track of is the current date and time that the server received this answer. For now, it could be just like, I just want to maybe keep track of some stats. But later on, we may want to use that time information to calculate like how much time it took for the player to answer a trivia question from one question to another. And maybe there's some bonus points that we want to award for people who can answer questions more quickly or within some kind of threshold. So we'll go ahead and just store the using date.now. We'll keep track of that. For this answer, let's see, on the server side, until we have like a way of storing state that's not just in memory, if like we're using some type of server-based storage or a database, maybe, we might get into that. I'm going to change this players from a constant to using a let, because then we're going to as the games are played, this array is going to change. So even though you can update so we're keeping track of players, I believe, as players are joining. So we have an ID and a player name. So right now, the only thing we're storing in our player array is the ID and player name. So I want to find the current player by using players.find. That's an array method, right? Where the ID is equal to the ID that was just passed to this function. And this should never fail, right? It shouldn't. But it's just good practice anyway to go ahead and add some constraints around, just some checks, like make sure that actually worked, that we're not working with a null object. So if player, we want to append the answers. So when we set up our new player, let's go ahead and create an empty answers array that's keeping track of the answers. And let's create a new object, player.answers push. So we're going to push a new item onto the array. And this item will include the question, the answer skipped, and the answer time. We need to calculate a score, and we need to send that score back to the client. So using our callback, instead of calling it callback, let's call it ACK for acknowledgement. Why not? And let's just use player.score. So let's add that property up here too. So when we create the player, the player's score will be 0. There's no answers in the array. And before we calculate the score, let's just see that this is working as we might expect on the server so far. So let's just console log the player. So what will be printed to the console should be the player. It's the player's ID, name, and then the array of all the answers, all the items that have been answered, trivia questions that have been answered. James just dropped a comment on LinkedIn saying, hello from Kenya. Happy to learn more on this live developer stream. Well, thank you for joining, James. I hope you do learn some things along the way. That's my goal. All right. So let's now switch over and run npm run dev, which is going to run our build step and launch the web server, which is on home port 8080 is what I have it configured for. We're going to start a new game. Player 1 is Reverent Geek. Right now we have the games set up for just 2 players. In the future, we may have allow to be configured for 3 players, 4 players, however many players. We're just going to say player 2. The game is about to start. And we got our first trivia question. So as I answer a trivia question, the message is being sent from the client to the server, and the server is storing Question 0 was answered the first choice. The skipped was false, and the answer time is this, the way that JavaScript keeps track of dates is this long integer value. So if I answer question 2 with choice 2, now we see another object here with 2 answers in the answer array. The first question 1 was answered index 1, which is the second choice in that array. Skipped is false. Answer time. Now let's try a skip. And now we have 3 items in the array. Answer is -1. Skipped is true. So far, so good. Everything's working like we would expect. One thing we don't have working right now is our timer. So normally, or in the future, we will have a timer that is also running that will limit the game to, say, 60 seconds. So after 60 seconds, the game ends for all the players, and the final scores are calculated, and the winner is determined, right? So that's what we'll do eventually. So everything's good so far. Let's get over here and calculate our score. Let's see. Trying to remember. So we got our quiz data. Where's our data? Trivia.json. So this is what our data looks like. We have a question. We have choices for those questions, and then we have a property that says the correct choice is, in this case, choice index 2. So if 0-based indexing. So this is 0, this is 1, this one is 2. So choice 3 in this particular question is the correct answer. So going back to the server, we have our trivia object is got our current pool of trivia questions. And so to calculate the score, we need to first of all, we can say that total questions is total questions that the player has answered or attempted to answer is going to be player.answers.length. So if they've answered 3 questions, the length of the array should be 3. Total correct is going to be, well, this is good. This is a little trickier, right? So maybe what we do is when we first receive this answer, we calculate, is this the correct answer? So correct is equal to trivia question. That should be the index of the question that's coming in, dot correct, right? That's this one right here is equal to answer. So regardless if they skipped it or not, if the answer that they provided is equal to the correct answer for that trivia question, then that means the player got it correct. So we only have to determine that one time. We shouldn't have to determine that every single time we calculate a score. So we'll just store that as part of the data that we are putting on this array of answers. So total correct is going to be player dot answers dot filter, where a dot correct. So correct is a Boolean, right? It's going to be, are these two things equal? So if we filter the number of answers by how many answers have been answered correctly and take the length of that array, then that's the total number of answers that were answered correctly. And conversely, we can say total incorrect is player.answers filter a, where a and take the length of that. And let's say that let's say, well, where the answer is incorrect and skipped is also false. So let's be explicit that they did answer the question, but they answered incorrectly. Because I want to know total skipped, player.answers.filter, where skipped is true. Okay. Now, to calculate our final score, we'll say score equals total correct times, we'll say 100. And we'll say minus total skipped. And skipped ones we'll say are worth like a negative 25. Like we won't, I'm just throwing out numbers. Total incorrect. Those are worth maybe more against your score. So I know I'm not scoring like someone might typically, or a test might be scored, right? Uh, a score in the case of a test, skipped and incorrect would also be like the same weight, the same value, negative 100, minus 100 for each ones that are skipped. But by adding more weight to the correct ones is kind of like building in a little bit of a bonus for answering things correctly. It's like the more you answer correctly, the obviously the higher your score is going to be, but kind of like it's a way of differentiating. Like if somebody answers 5 questions correctly, 5 out of 5 correctly versus 4 out of 5 if it skipped one, then not sure I'm really answering my own question or explaining that very well. But I want to be able to play around with the scoring and try to come to a gamified type scoring algorithm that is going to be in the favor of someone who answers correctly, but still give people the opportunity to have a positive score in the end. So let's call this total instead of score. And we'll say score is where if the total is more than 0, then we'll use the total. Otherwise, keep it at 0. We won't allow the score to go negative. So now player score equals that. So we can call this score. We didn't use total questions, but we might in the future if we come up with other ways of coming up with clever bonuses or scoring mechanism. So let's try this. So all the while, as I was making changes and saving that, the netmon or nodemon service that's watching the source code repository is automatically restarting the web application for us. We haven't made any changes to the front end code yet since we last started, so should just be good to start a new game. Start another player here. Player 2. 3, 2, 1. Start. Okay. So trivia question 1, I answered incorrectly. So my score is 0. All right. This is going to be tricky. Answered incorrectly. One of these days, I'll answer one. Okay, answered that one correct. So the score is still 0. So, bummer. I haven't been able to break 0 because I'm answering too many of them incorrectly. So, how can we do a better job of testing our scoring? That's where we're going to.
Here's what I found.
Here's where we're going to cheat the system a little bit because we are the developer. I'm going to drop a hint in the console. Let's see. Because we do have the correct answers on the client right now. In the future, as I've talked about, I want to remove that information from the data that's being sent to the client so that someone couldn't hack the game. So when the current question is being let's see. So the question object is being sent to the this quiz component. And in here, we could do something clever like see question dot correct. Got our button. Well, for now, let's just add a hint here. Um, give it an orange background. Padding of 4 all around, and maybe text. We got colors. Italic. That's what I want. So now if we refresh both of these, start a new game. Start a new game here. 3, 2, 1. We Psst, the correct choice is 1, which is actually 2 because the index. So let's see. We got it correct. Our score is currently 100. We got it correct. 2 answers correct. So our score is now 200. So that's working like we should be. So do we have a score? Yeah, here's our current score. So let's fix that so that we're displaying the score. So on the game, on the client, when we get our acknowledgement back from the server, let's see the developer tools. This is what the data that we're getting back from the server is just the number of the score. So in the acknowledgement, we'll change res to score, because that's the only data that's being sent back. And set this dot score equal to score. And let's do the same for this guy, this on the answer as well. Okay, let's refresh both of these, start a new game. Reverend Geek. Start a new game over here. David. 3, 2, 1, 0. Now let's choose. So as I'm answering correctly, the score up here is being updated to 2. So let's pick a wrong answer. So I've answered 2 correctly, 1 incorrectly. Now my score is 150. So that's 200 minus 50. 300 minus 50 is 250. So everything's trucking along as expected. It's good news. Good news. All right, I'm going to declare us done for today. We've got our scoring on the server. Next time, we'll need to work on the not only the score, but updating the state of the clients so that there's a countdown. And so today we recorded answers and calculated the current score. Whew. Good task to solve. Going to stop our server. All right, while I'm doing this, are there any questions about any of the stuff that we've covered today? I'll keep the stream going here for a few more minutes and to answer any questions. So we store answers server side and calculate score. Push that to the repository. Again, some time ago, Manish on LinkedIn says, is this possible to share this code? Yeah, absolutely. Everything that we've done today and on the previous streams is available on my source code repository at github.com/reverentgeek/ahot-trivia-game. Go grab the source code. Let me know if you can play around with the code that's out there. If you want to submit a pull request or any kind of suggestion or idea for the game, please do so. By the way, this is one of the coolest dad gifts I've ever received from one of my kids. It's a dad joke mug. And of course, it says, I keep all my dad jokes in my database. That is correct. What do you call James Bond taking a bath? 007. Some brilliant stuff right there. And if you didn't know, I've drawn a lot of dad jokes. Go check out my my Instagram or my website, reverendgeek.com. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining me today on the stream. If at any point you do have questions after the stream is over, or if you're watching this as a recording, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, social media. I am Reverend Geek on all the typical platforms, and you can reach me at david@reverendgeek.com. Be glad to help you in any way that I can. Again, my name is David Neal. I am a developer advocate for Pluralsight, and my job is to help you be more awesome. If there's anything I can do to help you with that, please let me know. Thank you again for joining me on today's stream, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and hope to see you on the next All Hands on Tech with your host, David Neal. See you again. Bye for now.